Moving on, we've got the Big Ten championship game. I think there were probably some people outside of the Indiana fan base that thought that Indiana had a chance here, but there weren't many. If they did, they didn't think it was going to be a game like this. Final, Indiana wins 13-10 in a slugfest, but Fernando Mendoza and Charlie Becker were the show in this game, connecting on several huge pass plays to give Indiana the final lead in this game and the final say. I was very impressed. Despite the fact that they only put up 13 points, I felt like they were the better offensive football team on the field. They didn't have Omar Cooper for pretty much the whole game. And he's been one of their most impact players all season. He leads the team in receptions, and he's up there in touchdowns with Elijah Surratt, mainly because he's a red zone target. They're probably around the same touchdown share, but he's been a key player all season. Charlie Becker steps up and has 6 catches for 126 and no touchdowns, but all of his catches were huge plays.
What impressed me the most was Indiana in the trenches. I did not think that they would have the ability to win there as much as they did. I mean, I think the rushing stats were something crazy. It was like maybe 150 to 40 or something like that in favor of Indiana. I never would have thought that.
Yeah, and they lived in the backfield too. They had like 5 sacks on Julian Sand.
They had like 10 TFLs.
A ton of TFLs, super disruptive. I think every single team on that side of the bracket, when the playoffs get announced, has got to be terrified of playing that front. I mean, if you can do that to Ohio State, what happens if you play a team like, let's say they play Ole Miss? Ole Miss has shown that they can play offense against anybody. Like any team they've played, they've put up at least 450 total yards. Like they're torching everybody. And they may not be scoring 50 points a game, but they're moving the ball on everybody. Let's say they hit a stonewall against Indiana and they get absolutely trounced. That would be a huge statement win for Indiana to say, look what we just did against one of the best offenses in college football. Let's say they do the same thing against Georgia. They play Georgia in one of the final games and they just stonewall Georgia and Georgia does nothing. Or they run a zone defense, kind of like what Georgia Tech did, and Gunnar Stockton throws for 60 yards and 2 interceptions and they lose in a blowout. I mean, you got to be feeling pretty confident that Indiana probably is the best team in college football after a win like that. You just beat Ohio State. I mean, I wouldn't want to play Indiana right now. Imagine if they beat a team like Georgia like that. It's a real possibility. We could be seeing a matchup like that.
I mean, I would not be surprised if they're hoisting the trophy in a month
Yeah, I
at
think there's
all.
probably a lot of people betting on Indiana right now. They're probably shifting to be the odds-on favorite, but Ohio State's probably still right there. Same with Georgia. I doubt they're too far behind. Texas Tech's probably getting a lot of money too, I would think. With a team that has a solid disruptive unit on defense as well, they're definitely going to be up there. So this game was, I mean, obviously not a lot of points, but there were a lot of key
It was a
plays.
really good football game to only be 13-10.
It was a classic Big Ten football game that I think anybody could watch. There's a lot of games like we do our optical assault game of the week now, and a lot of them are Big Ten games that are unwatchable. I feel like this is the definition of a game that if you just saw the score and you saw the teams, you'd be like, ugh, another Big Ten game. But if you actually watched the game, it didn't feel like it was 13-10. So I really enjoyed this one. We got to watch it from start to finish, which we don't get to do very often. The key plays that I noticed in this one, both were in the hands of Ohio State on 4th and 1. 4th and 1, they get stuffed on a QB sneak. We come back from the break and they tell us it's short. We thought they get the
And that
first
was like
down.
inside Indiana's 5 yard line.
Huge. They would have scored a touchdown most likely on that drive. And Indiana's red zone defense is incredible. They probably would have scored. Then you get the 27-yard field goal they miss on 4th and 1 because they like to play it safe. What happens if Ohio State doesn't play it safe? They get the first down, they score a touchdown, the game's over. We have a completely different conversation. So it's 2 play calls. All you need to do is get 1 yard. You take the riskier route and you go for it. You don't get it. You get a second chance and you say, I'm gonna play it safe, and then you still don't get it. That sucks. If you're Ohio State, that's a feeling you don't want to sit with for the next couple of weeks. So I think when they get back on the field, when they rematch Indiana, inevitably, in my opinion, I think at some point in the playoffs, I think they're going to remember those 2 plays. I think that's going to be a driving force in when they get in those situations again. What does Ohio State do? Do they go for the throat and go for the knockout punch, or do they try and play it safe? High percentage stuff like a QB sneak and a field goal. I don't think we see those calls again.
Well, the interesting thing about the QB sneak is it wasn't like it was 4th and 1 and it was like 3/4 of a yard. It was 4th and 1.5, and they did a QB sneak, which I thought was pretty interesting. And it's a
Yeah,
pretty long yardage for a QB sneak.
especially with a guy like Julian Sand who's not going to move the pile. If it's Jalen Hurts, yeah, I guess go for it. But like it's Julian Sand, so sketchy call there from Ryan Day. But I think that football team's going to have a head of steam in the playoffs regardless of how they finish that game. So really interesting one. Indiana now the number 1 team in college football. Never thought I would say that.
Wild stuff.
Team that has the most losses in college football history is now the number one team going
It's
into the
like a
playoffs.
college football 26 rebuild in real
Love to
life.
see it. Kurt Cignetti has the greatest rebuild we've probably ever seen. So looking forward to watching them down the stretch.